G'day guys and gal, this video gets requested a lot. Pretty much every video I've uploaded for the last month has had a comment by Alfie with a bunch of upvotes requesting it, so hey, I'm a man of the people. After all, everything I do is thanks to you. Enough of that cringy shenanigans, let's begin. The Primarks are l'espace mélange of Warhammer 40k, the most powerful, engaging and controversial characters around. So much potential in each of them, however more often than not, that potential ends up completely wasted, as the Primark was either killed or prematurely became a hectic demon with the personality of an evil Twitter bot from 2010. But what if that never occurred? What if Horus didn't go full bold jihadist mode on everyone? What if the Great Crusade ended and the Primarks were allowed to fulfill the post-Crusade role that they had originally been intended for? Before we get started, there hasn't been a Majorkill mini release for a while, but that changes today! After a lot of back and forward, improving and perfecting, the Majorkill Lord of the Night mini is for sale right now. It's no secret that one of my favourite factions in Battle Mace 40 million is the Knights, that like to go out at night. So I had to honour them by making a beautifully crafted character that brings all their best design aspects together. We got the flayed skin cloak, the batwing helmet, the lightning cracked armour, which I'm actually really keen to see what happens when you put a shade in it. To spoil you even further, the Lord of Night comes with a custom 32mm base, 2 helmet variants, and 2 melee weapon variants all in the one purchase. Everything's proportionate to official models so you can kit bash it all. All prices are in Australian dollars, aka Monopoly money, with some of the cheapest international shipping around. Too good to pass up in my heavily biased opinion. Today we'll go over what would have become of the galaxy if the heresy never happened. Obviously there's a lot of potential random stuff that could happen, but I'll focus on what we definitely know would happen, then I'll move into what probably would have happened. Let's get into it. To set some context, everything happens the exact same way leading up to the heresy. Chaos still exists and is still being a bitch. However, Horus was able to stop being a whiny little shit with daddy issues, hence it didn't get corrupted. Without Horus's fall, there is no potentially traitorous Primarchs that has the charisma or the will to ignite a galactic heresy. Because of that, Magnus never feels the need to warn the Emperor about Horus's betrayal, hence the webway remains intact. Also, Sanguinius and Conrad are a bit less depressed, as their future visions don't keep showing the heresy, something that accelerated Conrad's descent into madness in canon, as well as caused his very negative encounter with Rogel Dawn. The Great Crusade would continue for a few more decades as humanity mopped up the last of the galactic threats. The Orc menace is completely crushed and driven to pretty much near extinction. The Dark Elder on the back foot, finding raiding to be increasingly risky and difficult in a fortified Imperium. The Craftworld Elder and the Imperium maintain an uneasy truce. After all, the Emperor was said to know and even be mates with a couple of them. The first major event to occur would be the death of Angron, with the Butcher's nails finally overcoming his girth and giving him the mother of all aneurysms. This is completely unavoidable, with the Emperor and the greatest minds of Mars not knowing how to remove the nails. With Angron gone, the World Eaters chill out a bit. Unlike their Primarch, they did actually have a removal method for their nails, hence much of the Legion would probably have them removed. Overall, the Legion becomes more steadfast and less vicious. The webway would then be completed, potentially triggering a mini civil war and coup as the powerful navigated houses try to sabotage the project, as it was basically going to make them obsolete. These houses would be crushed, subjugated and reduced to slaves. After all, there would still be some warp travel here and there, hence navigators were not to be completely useless. The Council of Nicaea's edict of outlawing the use of the warp would get dissolved, as the Emperor only made it as a way of appeasing Primarchs until the webway project was done. This would anger Lehman and Mortarion, however Lehman would heal like the good dog he is. Mortarion may try to secede from the Imperium or create his own rebellion. After all, he still resented the Emperor for killing his adoptive Necro-daddy, and he hates Psykers. Morty is a bit of a hypocrite though, so it's equally as likely he would just grumble and tut. Fulgrim's mental health would continue to deteriorate as a result of his exposure to the Layer Blade. He would fight it, but it's unlikely he would ever be able to overcome it alone. Eventually something would happen. Either a fit of instability or sadism would emerge from Fulgrim in public, which would put up a big red flag. Ferris, and likely the Emperor, would come to Fulgrim and either banish the demon within the Layer Blade or be forced to kill Fulgrim, who may be too far gone. I personally think it would be the former, as Fulgrim almost resisted the demon by himself a few times in canon. Lorgar would still be an agent of chaos after the Emperor had spanked his ass at Monarchia. However, without Horus, he was mostly powerless. He would instigate chaos cults and subtly destabilize worlds in order to feed his hungry gods. And boy, are the chaos gods hungry. With humanity no longer relying on warp travel, as well as many of them moving into the new webway, the chaos gods' food source has dwindled dramatically. However, eventually everything would come to a head as the Emperor, Malkador, or one of the Primarks uncovers Lorgar's treachery. There would likely be a large war as the full might of chaos throws itself behind Lorgar. Who knows, maybe a few Primarks would die, but Lorgar most certainly would be destroyed. Perturabo would still crush his own homeworld for its rebellion against him, and he would panic that the Emperor would not forgive him. However, without a heresy to join, eventually he would face his father and be pleasantly surprised. After all, the Emperor's done way worse. It's likely, given enough time, Perty and Dawn would become friends. Since post-Crusade, there was much more time for building works of art and inventing things that weren't going to be used for war, a hobby that Dawn and Perty both wanted to share. Sadly, the Lion likely still would have returned to Caliban to find it full of traitors, hence the events of canon still play out, with Mr. Johnson ending up in a coma. It's unclear if his coma would last the 10,000 years like it has in canon, but yes, he would get knocked on his ass. Funnily enough, the Imperium that the Fallen would emerge into would be the Imperium that matches their values, so it's likely none of them would have fallen to chaos after they got spat back out by the warp. An interesting note is that without the Horus Heresy, the Pharos device never would have become overloaded, hence the Tyranids never would have discovered sentient life in the Milky Way. So that's a huge dub for the denizens of the galaxy, and really shows how noble bright the setting would have been without the heresy unfolding. Conrad's insanity would likely be cured by the Emperor. Conrad spoke to the Emperor in a vision, which could have just been Conrad being cuckoo, but the Emperor said that Conrad's insanity was curable, and they just had to see each other one more time. So I would say that Conrad would have been okay in the end with enough therapy, could eventually become the epic space Batman we all wanted for him. Magnus and the Emperor would explore the warp together in a much safer format. This isn't me being overly optimistic or anything, this is pretty much exactly what would happen. A couple dead Primarchs, but overall quite good. The threats the Imperium would face over the next 10,000 years would be minuscule. The War of the Beast would either not happen, or be easily put down by the Emperor's living might. There would be no cook shit like the Age of Apostasy, the retarded Abyssal Crusade, or the Baghdad War. The Maelstrom would eventually be purged, and perhaps the Eye of Terror would eventually shut. Some people think the Emperor would eventually purge the Primarchs and Space Marines due to them being obsolete, but I doubt it. Firstly, the Primarchs would rise up against them if he tried to destroy them or their legions, and secondly, the Emperor had to wank the shit out of himself to make enough cum for 20 demigod babies. You think the Biggie is just going to let all that semen go to waste? On a more bright side, Erda, the Primarch's mother, would survive as there is no heresy. With a noble bride Imperium, she may even return to the Emperor's side. Although the Emperor wouldn't purge the legions, he would continue to reduce their role and likely stop the creation of more Space Marines, as there is no more wars to fight for a long time. The Elder would probably be forced to make concessions to the Imperium after losing numerous conflicts with them, whilst Comora would eventually get purged by mankind if they had nothing better to do. Without the superstitious, xenophobic, zealous culture of the canon Imperium, the emerging Tau probably would have found a lot of common ground with the enlightened science-based Imperium and enjoyed a solid alliance. The biggest issue of all would arise at the awakening of the Necron Empire. The canon Necron Empire isn't a massive threat because they don't see the fractured galaxy as a threat, hence they are happy to bicker and wage civil war amongst themselves. However, if they felt threatened by a unified galaxy, then they too would unify, which is a terrifying prospect considering how insane their technology and weapons are. That would be a fucking epic war. A unified Necron race against the Imperium, Tau, and Eldar. And who knows, maybe the Tyranids would find their way to the Milky Way eventually, especially if some spicy bombs go off during the war against the Necrons. Coming back to the video's original inspiration, the incessant commenting by Alfie Ingolini must be answered. Disclaimer, this next part is purely my personal opinion based on my knowledge. There is no official lore detailing what each Primarch's role would have been after the Great Crusade. The Lion was like a mini emperor, steadfast against chaos, commands absolute respect and power, a natural leader, but in a coma, not so much filling much of a role here. Fulgrim would either be dead or under a lot of scrutiny because of his layer blade antics, so he would likely take a backseat in the Imperium, dedicating his time to artistic pursuits and a lot of rehab. Like, a lot. Perturabo would be a builder and inventor, raising massive and wildly impressive monuments and buildings in the Emperor's name. He and Rogel would likely develop a brotherly competition. There isn't much for Jagadai in a peaceful Imperium. It's likely he would request freedom from his father's service to roam the galaxy and protect the vulnerable far-flung worlds. Russ would remain the Emperor's executioner, being sent in to deal with unexpected hostile Xeno empires or uprisings. He would probably be the one to kill Lorgar. Dawn would remain the Praetorian of Terror, building works of art that were completely without shields, gun batteries, or any form of defense systems. Conrad would hang out with Fulgrim in therapy. If he ever stabilized enough, he could take the role of Master of Law for the Imperium. Sanguinius would remain the shining beacon of mankind, its moral guide and one of the Emperor's closest advisors. Ferrus would take on the role of Master Engineer, working with Perturabo to invent wonders to improve the human condition. He would also eventually figure out how to purge the necrodermis from his system, regaining his human hands. Guilliman would become the administrative leader of the Imperium, a very time-consuming task, however very important. After all, when dealing with 1,000,000 sextillion citizens, the tiniest mathematical mistake could doom millions to death by starvation. Mortarion would be the safeguard against the warp, ensuring the machinations of chaos did not arise unnoticed or unpunished. On the flip side, Magnus would take the role of Chief of the Liberius and Master of Psychers, training the ever-increasingly human psychic population to control their power to use for the good of mankind. Horus would take the role of representative of the Imperium, the chief diplomat, making contact with newly discovered worlds and races beyond the Great Crusade. Lorgar was supposed to be the herald of the Imperial truth, and he would probably deceivingly occupy this role for a time, but due to his corruption, he would vacate this role pretty soon. Vulcan would be the master of hugs, as well as the inventor of new technology. He, Ferrus, and Perturabo would work closely with each other to create artifacts that would eclipse even the Dark Age of technology's greatest marvels. Corvus Corax would be the master of intelligence and Black Ops, putting down threats before they emerged. It would likely be him who discovered Lorgar's true nature. Alphares Omegon would fulfill a similar role, but in a much different way. It's likely every legion would be infiltrated by the Alpha Legionnaires after the Crusade to watch for betrayal. There you go, Alfie. If this video flops, it's all your fault. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. Only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of fun little things that make your fun little thing get more fun. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more fulfilling content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.